And he asked me again what my symptoms were, and he said, you need to get to the ER right now. And the urgency in his voice, I thought, okay, I better go.
Each one of us has a story. It's being written in moments of both joy and pain, in life's triumphs and its tragedies. It holds the power to inspire, to deliver hope, to bring change, but only if we will use the power of a voice.
Kiona, we go back, way back, but I want you to tell me about your childhood, everything, because today you have a story that scares me. So let's start from the beginning. Okay. As a little girl.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm an ex-New Yorker. I was born in Brooklyn. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school in Brooklyn. and then I did my undergrad in upstate New York and a school called SUNY Albany. And then I thought I wanted to go to criminal justice, and then I moved out here. I worked for a judge right after graduation, and I was like, no way. If I'm going to deal with people acting like kids, I'm going to work with kids. So I went to DU, got my master's in special education, and got a job in Littleton Public Schools. And I worked there for 5 years, and then I started having kids and was a stay-at-home mom, which I feel so blessed that I was able to do that. And then as you know, I had you come and value out my house because I was going through a divorce, and you had kind of pointed me in the direction of real estate and said that could be something that you could do flexible-wise, and that's kind of how you and I really connected, which was amazing. Like, I learned from one of the best, and
thank you.
So I kind of went into that field after I got divorced, but I do love children, and, I found myself wanting to get back into the classroom. So
that's still in special ed?
Yep. So I'm in special ed. I teach littles, K through 2. They're awesome. They're losing their teeth. They still believe in the tooth fairy. They still believe in Santa, like all those kind of things. So they're really great to work with. But I do still do real estate on the side. Like, that's kind of my side hustle. I always say I sell houses to fund my passion. Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and doing both.
Kiona, you heard about my stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And?
I did. I heard about somebody, I think, that you had done business with, and they said, hey, did you hear Lori had a stroke? And I reached out. I mean, it's such a scary thing. And I was thinking to myself, Lori is young, healthy, like that really scared me. Mm-hmm. The thought that it could happen to somebody like you, it could happen to anybody, right? When you hear these stories, when you hear it happening to somebody else that you look at and you're like, they're healthy, they're active, they're, young, then that's really what is scary. So I had heard about your story, reached out, and then I saw that you had this show.
Because you had a story.
Yep. Okay. Yeah.
Tell me again what happened.
Okay. So I had this was May 3rd, and I had woke up that morning and had a completely tingly side of my face. And I had been in a car accident in the fall, and I had some left side nerve damage. So I kind of was thinking, maybe it's just something from that. I had had a medical massage a few days earlier, and I thought, well, maybe this is just kind of she got out some toxins or something. So I went to work. I went to teach. And as the morning progressed, I started getting a headache on the left side, and my arm felt a little bit weird. And so I start Googling, and I'm like, I keep saying stroke. So I'm like, am I having a stroke right now? So I went down to the school nurse, and I knocked on her door, and I went in and I said, hey, I know I usually bring you sick kids, but I think something's wrong. I think I might be having a stroke. And so she looked at me, did a couple of tests, and she said, I don't think you're having a stroke, but she said, I think we should call your PCP. And I go to a PCP very close by, called them, told them my symptoms, and the nurse said, can you come in like a half hour? And I was like, sure, I'll be right there. And then she said, hold on one second. And then this guy got on, who later I found out was a PA, and he asked me again what my symptoms were, and he said, you need to get to the ER right now. And the urgency in his voice, I thought, okay, I better go.
Why the difference?
And yeah. So I think she was just a nurse, and when he heard I had a headache on the left, everything was on the left side, and I think that's a big indicator for things like stroke and other things, where if it's on one side, and a lot of those symptoms were stroke symptoms. So the urgency in his voice, I just thought I better go. And this happened to be during Teacher Appreciation Week. And so I said to my teammates, hey, I'm just going to run to the ER real quick.
Yeah, real quick.
I'm just going to run really quick and go get this checked out. I'm just kind of feeling a little off. So I'll be back soon. And they were like, all right. And none of us thought maybe I shouldn't drive myself to the ER. Like none of us were really thinking it was something serious. I really thought I was going to go waste a bunch of money, waste a bunch of time, and they were going to be like, get back to work, you're a hypochondriac. And, that's really what I thought was going to happen. And so I went to Skyridge and, did the check-in and told the ER doctor, about, I think this might be from my accident, but I just thought I better come in. My PCP said I better come in. And he said, if you would be okay with it, I'd really like to run an MRI. And that saved my life. That truly saved my life. And
the same PA that you had talked to?
Well, this was the ER doctor now. So he wanted to run an MRI. He wasn't just discounting it as a headache or a migraine or something from the accident. He said, I think we should run an MRI based on your symptoms. And so, they got me in pretty quickly into the MRI, and I'm sitting out in the waiting room. And the ER doctor is kind of bopping from couch to couch, kind of telling everybody their business out there. And I was thinking, this is so odd. Like, I feel like I'm on like an episode of like ER or something. And I kept saying, like, what about HIPAA? Like everything's so private. But he was just, and I learned later that they're a trauma hospital, I guess, so they can kind of do that because people were out there with like IVs. And it was such an it was a really odd experience. But anyway, so I'm sitting on the couch and he says, hey, good news. You're not having a stroke. And I was like, all right, great. Like, do I just check out or how do I get back to work? And he said, well, not so fast. He said, we did see something that was concerning on the MRI and we'd like to do a CAT scan with contrast. And so I said, sure. Just thinking in my head, more dollar signs, like, okay, this is really going to be a doozy of a bill, but if you say so, I'll do it. So they got me back pretty quickly. And then I, was just waiting out in the waiting room, and I'm texting my girlfriends at work. I'm like, hey, can you make sure you save me one of those Jimmy John's sandwiches? Like, I should be back any minute. And then the ER doctor came out and said, let's go in this room and talk. And that's when I knew something wasn't good, because before he was all about telling me my business out in the waiting room. And then once he said, let's go in this room, and the look on his face was of astonishment. And he had called one of the big neurovascular surgeon practices over at Swedish before he had told me the news. And he said, I've just spoke to this particular office. I had the doctor look at your scans just to make sure that I'm telling you the right thing. And you have a brain aneurysm. And I just looked at him. That was so not what I was expecting him to say. I didn't even know how to spell the word before.
That's a big word.
Yeah, it's a big word. It is spelled really weird. And so you just hear these like stories, like that random story of maybe somebody, who never woke up or went out for a jog, came home and collapsed and died. So, it's surreal. I'm sure kind of similar for you when someone tells you that you've had something like that. It's really not the way you thought your day was going to go.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. And I looked at him and I said, am I going to die? Is what I asked him. And he said, you have a very, 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 very rare kind, and you are going to need a specialist of a specialist. But they can treat it because we found it and it's unruptured. And he said it's truly, he called it divine intervention, because all those symptoms I was having had nothing to do with the aneurysm. And they went away the next day.
Wow.
Yeah. So he literally used those words, divine intervention.
You get told this story, and where do you go?
Right.
Who do you call?
Right. Where do you go? Right. Like, I mean, this isn't just like a sprained ankle and, an orthopedist is a dime a dozen, right? I mean, this was like I needed, so they give you that ER discharge paperwork, and I look up the term, and it's terrifying because it's so rare. It makes up the kind I still have, and hopefully it's on its way out, makes up less than 1% of aneurysms. So when you try to find information out there, you really can't find anything except that it's typically fatal. It typically ruptures, the location of it. So it was kind of doomsday looking it up. And I really tried not to go onto blogs and things like that. And I went onto I found this site called, it's called BAF for short. It's Brain Aneurysm Foundation, and they're amazing. They have such a good, really, really true definitions. It's not just what people's opinions or things like that.
Can I go back to your ER experience?
Yeah.
The doctor, did he have a bedside manner?
Yes, he was amazing. He really was. I think he was surprised he was giving me that news. People don't really see aneurysms of that size, unruptured. Typically, it's after it ruptures is when they see them. So I think even he was astonished of the news. And I sent him a thank you note after I had my surgery, and I said, you saved my life. Mm-hmm. And I went and brought flowers to the PA at the PCP because his urgency and his voice saved my life. And I said, you all saved my life. I'm here, and I'm being a mom because of you guys.
Did you go back to school or go home?
I went back to school. And my friends were like, what are you doing here? After I told them, they were like, what are you doing here? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I think I was in such shock because it was just, I woke up that morning, took my dog for a walk. Like, that was not what I was expecting my day to turn out like. I mean, this was a life-altering diagnosis.
Did anybody say, go to bed, right?
Well, they were like, wait, they don't want to like do surgery, or they're just letting you walk out of there like that? I mean, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess, though, that when you're diagnosed with one unruptured, it's not an emergency typically. I mean, because they still are learning so much about it. There's so little compared to like brain cancer, brain tumors, or breast cancer, things like that, stroke even. There's a lot of research that has gone on, a lot of money that's poured in. But brain aneurysms are really still kind of like they call it a silent killer they're not that well, and this is part of my, probably you experience it, the loss for words. I have to search for words still. But it's just not that much out there. Like, people don't know a lot about them. And so there's not a lot of research that goes into it. And so, it's not an emergency when they find it unruptured.
Is it?
To me, it was like an emergency. I just got told I had a ticking time bomb in my head. But,
is it like a grapefruit in your brain?
No. So what it does is it's a weakness of a blood vessel or an artery. Mm-hmm. So most of them are saccular. So if you pictured kind of like a berry growing off of the vessel or the artery, but mine, the other one that it could be that's much more dangerous, much more rare, it's called a fusiform. And so it's like the whole artery is swollen. So picture like a snake eating a rabbit. where it has that bulge in the middle of the snake when it eats. That's what my blood vessel was like. So that's
in your brain.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it fed off of the vision artery. So the posterior cerebral artery is your vision artery. And so
You're doing well with words, honey.
Yeah. Thank goodness. I have a little bit of vision stuff going on. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, but I still do find that like word recall is hard, memory. I have to set timers for things. But yeah, so you asked earlier, like, where do you go once you have this diagnosis? And I threw out a huge net, being in real estate, being in teaching, having friends, whose husbands are in the medical world. I kind of just threw out a big net and said, I put it on Nextdoor. I need a neurovascular surgeon that deals with aneurysms, and I need the best of the best. And I even thought about going back to New York. New York has some of the best care you can get, but I thought, I'm living in Denver. We have CU Medicine here. We have Anschutz. Like, this isn't just some small little town. Like, I should be able to find a good doctor here, because I knew it wasn't just going to be a one-step thing, and I needed to have that person here in Denver in case of emergencies and stuff like that. So I put a big net out and asked everybody and anybody. I need the best of the best. And a friend of a friend of a friend had reached out to me, and I didn't quite know what her role was. I knew she was in some type of neuro field, but I wasn't quite sure what her role was. And she talked to me mom to mom. She said, you're okay. Like, you're gonna have to have surgery and all this kind of stuff. But she said, you found it unruptured, and that is the biggest piece of it. And she said, if this were me, this is who I would go to. And I think she kind of streamlined it a little bit for me. She didn't know me, never had met me, but she was so put me at ease a little bit, from a mom to a mom.
Okay, where were you? At your house that you had this conversation?
No, I was at school. I mean, I was like making all these calls while I'm at school, right? I'm like, guys, hold on a sec, But luckily it was at the end of the right, no coloring yet. But luckily it was at the end of the school year, so it's kind of like you're wrapping everything up. It couldn't have happened at a better time for me if it had to have happened, because I took the whole summer to recuperate from surgeries and things like that. But I'm having this conversation with her, and there was a lot of crying, because when you
How long of a time period from when you were diagnosed to the conversation?
I want to say that conversation was maybe like 5 days out from when or maybe even like 4. I mean, it was quick. And that's the thing, when they talk about it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to get somebody through a major medical crisis. As you know, as I know now, it's not just one friend, one family member, it is everybody. And so that's why I just feel like it really was a miracle, because I had so many people I didn't know, treating me with this just kindness and wanting to go to bat for me and wanting to help me.
When you discovered it in your head, did you mentally think, I have a time bomb?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I had a trip planned that I had planned since like February to go to Mexico with the kids. And my daughter had ACL surgery. I had my car accident. Like, it was just kind of like the year from hell. And so, we were all looking forward to that trip. And I just kept asking, like, is it okay if I go on my trip? Because I was like, maybe this could be my last time. I don't know. Like, this could be my last time going on vacation, taking my kids to do something like that. There's a lot of those thoughts of this could be the last time.
When did you tell your children?
I told them that night because I think that just it was such a shock, and I think my face was kind of like this, just wide-eyed, I just got told something that could end my life. at any moment, at any time, unexpectedly. And so I did tell them, and, there's that fine line of trying to tell them, being truthful, but also not scaring them. I think as a mom, that's a really big thing of trying not to scare them, even when you talk about events in life, right? Like life is crazy right now, with school shootings and all those kind of things. It's very that fine line of saying you're going to be okay, but also kind of giving them the facts and letting them know. So,
and your children are how old?
So my oldest just turned 19, my middle just turned 17, and then my little one's going to be turning 12 this month. So, so they're at ages where they can understand, and they were scared. I mean, and I said, don't go, because the first thing they
don't
do,
go Google.
Don't go Google, right? But they Googled it, and if you Google that, it's not good. It is not. Those statistics aren't great. So I had told them, and kind of told my girlfriends. I mean, tears would just come.
Still come.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward, how did you find the doctor?
Yeah. So that lady who was a friend of a friend of a friend, she had hooked me up with CU Anschutz, and it turned out that she was a chief of neurosurgery at a pretty major hospital around here. And I talked to her. I had no idea. I probably would have been more anxious talking to her. And I just thought, wow, this woman is so busy and helped me, and gave me her personal cell phone and just was so kind during a time when I really needed it. Because,
the power of the voice. Honey.
Right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, it's so valuable when you're going through something like that. But I had went and had the ER doctor had told me to go to this specific group at Swedish. They had my scans. He had talked to them. So they were very familiar with my case. And what I found is most of these people do these neuro doctors, they kind of meet as a team and see who can handle it. Because when you have an aneurysm, they can go in and cut your skull open and, peel away your skull and go on in and clip it. And that's much more invasive, visual, right? Yeah. Or they can go in through the groin and do it vascular. And that's how I had it, and that was the only choice I had. Some people have both options, but because of the location of mine and the type that I had, that was the only choice. So I went.
What percent of the population have aneurysm?
So 1 in 50 people have an unruptured aneurysm. That's a pretty big statistic.
Yeah.
And every 18 minutes, one ruptures. So it's scary.
Let's go get tested.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. Insurance companies don't want to pay for those scans, and those scans could save somebody's life. So somebody who comes in and says, I've been having a bad migraine, or, I've had this headache that's just, kind of like the worst headache of my life, they need to get scanned, or if you're having vision problems, headaches, numbness, weakness in the arms, a lot of the same things that simulate a stroke are also signs of an aneurysm rupture. And sometimes, depending on when they catch it, if they catch it right as it's ruptured, the damage could be a lot less. They could save their life. They could save their quality of life. It's these people that where it happens, they either are misdiagnosed, they go to the ER and they don't run scans, or they just don't go at all and they think, oh, it's just stress or it's just a headache. So scans, that's why the hashtag is scan to save, because it really can save people's lives. So,
the surgery.
Yeah. So I went and had my first opinion, and because it was so rare, I had asked him, how many of these have you done? And he said none.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, that didn't make me feel very good. And he said, I've done a few rare ones, but he just he was great. His bedside manner was great. But when he said that, I went for a second opinion to over to Anschutz, where I had been recommended, and I asked him the same question, and he said, "Have I done one exactly like yours? No, but have I done rare ones? That's all the time. I do them all the time." And that his confidence, I was like, this is the guy who he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. And he is I believe he's like chief of neurovascular surgery at Anschutz. And so I think he kind of only does like the rare, kind of really difficult ones to treat. And he was telling me about this certain type of stent that they might have to use that only 8 have been used in the country. They're not even FDA approved. They'd have to do like a compassion appeal to the insurance companies, because mine, the type that I had was rare, the location of it was rare, and it was bent. So it was like twisting. So they weren't even sure if they were going to be able to get like a catheter up in there to treat it. So he said, I really want to, we have to do an angiogram. And I also want to do this test called a balloon and occlusion test to see if we can sacrifice that parent artery. So sometimes they just have to take the whole artery out and just kind of shut it down because that's the only way that they could treat it. And that had been a recommendation of the first surgeon that I saw.
Who didn't have
any experience and didn't mention anything about this balloon occlusion test. And the whole reason they do it is to see what kind of neurological impact it would have, right? So this guy, the first surgeon, said, oh, well, maybe it'll just be your peripheral vision if we take out that artery. And I was thinking, all right, well, I guess I could maybe go without a little peripheral vision. Well, when I went to Anschutz, this was on a Tuesday when I saw him, and he said, okay, so can you come in Thursday or Friday? And I was like, yeah, okay, like, let's get it going. Like, and I felt like the other doctor's office was a little bit more laid back about it. So I went in on Friday. That was a Tuesday. I went in on Friday. So I started asking him, so are you going to like put me to sleep for this, or are you going to, and he said, nope, you're going to be wide awake. Totally, not an ounce of a Valium, nothing. Like, you are going to be awake for this whole thing because we have to see what kind of neurological impact it has. So they do the angiogram, and I'm looking, and it's this big sterile room with tons of TV screens and tons of nurses in there. And he said, he's talking to me as he's doing it, and your head's very still.
You're in surgery now.
Yeah, and you're completely awake. So this is not I had 2 surgeries per se. So this is the first one, is just to come up with a game plan of how we could treat this. So they got to go in, and they go in through your groin, and he gets his pictures, and then he says, okay, now I'm going to go in and I'm going to insert the balloon into the artery. So they inflate the balloon and cut off all blood supply.
Do you feel anything?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep. It was, like there would be times where I'd be like, oh, that hurts by my left ear. And he would say, yep, I'm, right up in there. And the sound in the back here is similar to, like when you pour milk over Rice Krispies. It's like that crackling. Yeah, it's yucky. It's really yucky. but so he says, okay, I'm going to inflate the balloon. And all I kind of saw was it kind of just like went blurry, like I was about to go to sleep. And then all of a sudden I came to again, and I'm not on any drugs. And what happened was I lost all sight. I lost all motor control, and I lost all like memory of that. But I was awake. But
because he hit a nerve?
Well, because he stopped the blood flow. So had they took that artery out, like the first doctor wanted to do, without testing it, I would have been blind, paralyzed, and probably lost all memory. Mm-hmm. Wow. So this he's amazing. Like, they're amazing there, and they are so brilliant and just so skilled. And this is, I tell everybody, if you ever have something that's really, really wrong with you, go to Anschutz. They are amazing. They're amazing. And they have a stroke and aneurysm center there. So I knew I was kind of in the right place. So, I, kind of came back too from that procedure and was a little freaked out because I couldn't see right away. And, eventually I kind of came back to baseline. But he said, well, bad news is we can't take out that artery because you'd be blind and paralyzed. But he said the good news is we were able to fit a catheter in there. So we will be able to put a stent in. So he said, I said, well, can I still go on my trip? I was like so worried about this trip because if I disappointed my 17-year-old daughter, I would have been in big trouble. So I was just like, we just have to go on this trip or she's just not going to be happy. He said, yep. He said, you know what? I'm going to be on vacation too. Let's both get tan. We'll reconvene when we're both tan. I'll see you in like a week and a half or whatever it was.
You're not nervous that anything's going to happen?
I was. So I did do a little looking to see. We were going to Cancun. So I looked to see what kind of hospitals they had there. I did look at travel insurance, but obviously it was too late because I had a pre-existing condition now. So I did see that they had something. I called my insurance company and said, what if I have an emergency down there? But really, this was... I wasn't going to have this rupture and then be okay. Like I would have died. Mm-hmm. So I really just kind of had a friend on standby that would go down there if something happened, and everybody had everybody's numbers and everybody was checking in every day. And so, yeah, they were, I don't know if they were, kind of after the fact, they were like, we weren't really too happy that you went down there, but we knew you were going to do it anyway. So, so I went down to Mexico, had a great time with the kids. I couldn't drink, though, which was a little bit of a bummer because it was an all-inclusive and I had to be on blood thinners and all that kind of stuff to get ready for the surgery. But we at least got to go and had a family trip, and that was really, really important to me. It was important to the kids, and because, like I said, you just don't know if it's like your last time. Mm. So came back and then really got my affairs in order, got my will redone. I had talked to one of my best friends about how I wanted my kids to be raised. Even though they have their dad in the picture, it's not their mom. Mm.
So I had a totally different experience. Yeah. It just happened and I couldn't talk about it.
Right.
You could talk about it. And I think that's worse.
Yeah. Yes. It's just that anticipation of what if. And, I've had other surgeries in my life, but this is your brain. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to come out blind. I didn't know if I was going to come out brain damaged or if I was going to come out at all. And I have never felt so close to death, really. I mean, those moments before they brought me into the OR, signing all those consents. And a lot of times, they came and asked me if I was okay with a blood transfusion. And I said, sure. And they're like, not that we anticipate we'll need it, but that was not what was said when those other risks were a possibility. Like that wasn't like, well, we don't anticipate this. Like these are all very real risks. And I had a prayer blanket that my aunt had made for me prior to the surgery, and I had that draped over me. And I am a religious person. I do, and my dad had passed away about it's almost 3 years ago now, and I do believe he was up there watching over me. But I just said I'm not ready to go. I'm not ready to go yet. I don't want to go. My kids need me, and I grabbed that surgeon's hand and I said, you have to keep me safe. You have to keep me safe because my kids need me.
That is a moment between you, the surgeon, and God.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. So he said, if it's not safe, I'm going to pull out. So we could be in the same position we are in right now. You could wake up and I have done nothing. Which was also like terrifying because I was like, I know I have to get this fixed. And if he can't go in there and fix it, like, what am I going to do? Is it just, do I just wait until I collapse someday? You know, I mean, that was also a scary, scary thought. You know, they took me back and I said, okay. And they rolled me back and they asked what kind of music I wanted to listen to. And I said Three Little Birds by Bob Marley because that was my dad's favorite song. And I was okay. It's very hard to talk about now because I know how close I was and how lucky I am to be here and how fortunate I am to be here and how blessed. But it was a very, very hard thing to go through, and especially alone. I mean, even though I had family, friends, you know, my children, I wasn't alone, but I didn't have that. I don't have a partner that I knew could take care of my kids or I knew could take care of me. I mean, what if I came out of this brain damaged? What would that look like? You know, I mean, so it is very, very hard to talk about still. But I woke up and the first thing I saw was the ceiling and I was like, I have my eyes. And then I was like, did he do it? Did he put it in? You know, because he was putting a stent in.
Were you knocked out?
Yes. So I was completely out, thank God. Yeah, I told him that time after that. I was like, I'm never doing that again. And so, yeah, I was completely knocked out. I woke up from the surgery and I could see the ceiling and I knew I had my vision. I just wasn't sure if he had been able to go in and put it in. And they said, yep, he got it in. Everything went great. You're good. You know, he came in and said it couldn't have gone any better. So I was, you know, very, very happy. And, you know, my girlfriend who went with me, you know, we are like tied for life. Like I said, going through that together, like, you know, we're bonded for life now as if we weren't before. But, I spent a night in the ICU and then that was it. And then I went home. And, you know, I mean, I couldn't, you know, I have restrictions. There's certain things that I shouldn't be doing or, you know, just kind of like exerting, like that heavy exerting myself. So I'm not, you know, going
for life.
No, hopefully just we'll go. I have to go back in December, which is like my 6-month checkup. They'll kind of they'll sedate me. They go back in through the groin. They're going to do an angiogram, see if the stent is working, because that's the whole plan, is that it diverts flow from that aneurysm. It kind of like creates a tunnel in the vessel so that aneurysm isn't
Why are they waiting for 6 months?
Yeah. So I think they have to see if it heals. Like that's kind of what they're waiting for. And obviously if I was having certain kinds of symptoms, then they would have to probably check me, do an MRI or things like that. But it's pretty standard. They wait 6 months. I'm still on blood thinners, still on baby aspirin. That'll be on for the rest of my life, possibly the blood thinners, hopefully not, because they worry about stroke. Now that's the thing I have to worry about. So, you know, those blood thinners, I have a timer set on my phone.
Why do you have to worry about a stroke now?
So when they put the stent in, then you could have blockage. If the blood starts to clot in that stent, then you can have blockage, which would be the stroke. So that's why those blood thinners are really important. So I have a timer on my phone. I have blood thinners in the car. I have them in my purse, like just in case I wasn't home in time to take them.
How often do you take them?
Just once a day. So this diagnosis and, the surgery, I think like what's hard is everybody's like, oh, good, you're fixed. Everything went good. But it's a lifelong thing. It will be a lifelong, because I have a stent in my head now. which is not a normal thing that you have in there.
And
so
people can't see that.
Right. And I look completely normal. I didn't even have like a shave because, some people are like, oh, I thought you were going to be bald or, I thought you look okay. Yeah. I think on the outside, I can function and I look normal, right? But I do have these things inside of me that are not completely normal yet, and that is a lifelong thing. I'll have to get those angiograms every 6 months for a while. Then they'll move to every year, and then hopefully I'll go to like MRAs, but I will be monitored for the rest of my life.
So when I got out of the hospital, I kept asking doctors, can you just take a picture of my brain, right, and see how it's healing?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, right. So, and that's the thing, they'll do that during those angiograms, but so that's all, that's the other part, right? Is everything okay? Because you can't see in there. If you had like a broken hand, you'd be able to tell something still was broken, but this, you just can't see in there, right? And it's those scans that really are the thing that give you that peace of mind. So I think after this December scan, I'll feel more comfortable about where I'm at in my recovery and healing, and if it's really going away. Sometimes they have to put 2 stents in. Sometimes they have to open the stent a little bit more. Sometimes, so hopefully, fingers crossed, when I go in, it'll be good news.
So do your kids, are you awake, Mom?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I definitely notice, in particular, my daughter. Boys aren't as lovey-dovey and caring. I shouldn't say caring, but they just show it in a different way. But my daughter and I, she's been amazing. All my kids have been amazing, but definitely my daughter checks in more, I think, just to make sure. And when they're at their dad's and they don't see me, we still talk every day, which we weren't doing that all the time, not for any bad reason, but wasn't as much of a worry then, there wasn't that worry.
And inside your brain, what's your left side of the brain telling you right every day?
Well, that is when I wake up, I'm like, I'm awake. I'm here, and it's hard because you try to tell yourself you're okay, you're in good hands, they've fixed it, but there's always that little piece of fear that what if they didn't fix it, or what if it's not working in there, or what if, right? You have a lot of those what ifs, but I try to just really focus on the positive. And, initially I had like really, really bad headaches, and now I'll go a day without Tylenol, and that's an improvement. Mm-hmm. So it's that slow progress, as you know. I feel like it's very slow to heal. And takes time. I do have some vision stuff. I do have a little bit of peripheral vision.
Will that go away?
Hopefully. 6 months is a big mark to see what's a side effect of the surgery and what's permanent. So we'll see. And I guess everything, whatever, if it's on your left side, then you have the effects on the right side and vice versa. So, but I'll take it. I got to see my kid go to college. I got to go and move him in, and
you're not dying, honey.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing. I'm here.
So tell me about this bracelet that you gave me.
Yeah. So September is Brain Aneurysm Awareness Month. And there really is a big push to get this out there. And that's part of why I think it's awesome having me on your show. Because if I could just save one person, if one person sees my story and says, God, like my eye, I've been having this pressure behind my eye, I better go get checked, And it is being that advocate for yourself. A lot of times they don't want to do the scans. And, I think just really advocating for yourself, this isn't normal. I know something's not right in that gut. We all talk about that instinct that when the hair stands up on the back of your neck, right? If I could save one person's life, and if they could find this and get it fixed before it ruptures, then our job is done here, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. So So September is Brain Aneurysm Awareness. That BAF, what they call it, is a great place. They're collecting donations. September 15th is actually the day of engagement. I know this. I don't know if this airs or not before them, but that's a big day of engagement, and they're looking for donations to get research done, and they have support groups, and really just to get the word out there. This is a silent killer, and but it doesn't have to be. If you find it, it doesn't have to be. You can still be here. I can still be here for my kids. This person could still be there for their kids. This person, this couple's not going to lose their child. And it can happen in children too. Mm-hmm. And it can run in families. So I will be
hereditary?
It can be. So it can either be that. It can be from trauma. It can be just kind of an abnormality at birth or, kind of during that development stage. But my kids will get scanned when they're in their mid-20s.
Is it a gene?
I don't think so. I think it's just something that runs in either families or lifestyles. So high blood pressure, drugs like cocaine use, smoking, all those kind of things can cause that to maybe if it's in there, it can make it, I think if it could kind of, make it come to a head or something like that. But just being a woman over 40 puts you at a much higher risk of an aneurysm.
And men?
They can get it too, but it's more prevalent in women.
Wow.
And it's more prevalent over the age of 40.
And do you think women are scared? I have a headache. It's nothing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to pursue it because maybe it's a brain aneurysm.
Right. And I guess
you don't know, right?
You don't know, right? And you don't want to be a hypochondriac, kind of how I felt that day. I was like, well, I'm going to be spending a whole bunch of money and he's going to tell me to go back to work and I wasted all this time and right? But it was just something in my gut that told me to go. Like the sternness in his voice told me to go. And I think just listening to that, whether it's cancer, whether it's a stroke, whether it's an aneurysm, it really comes down to just listening to that voice that something's not right. And I think, I'm a healthy, I exercise, I don't do any of those, I don't have high blood pressure, I don't do recreational drugs, all those kind of things didn't put me really in that normal category of risk except for being a woman over 40. But again, I had never heard of it. Really, it was just that random kind of, I think that was someone passed from, something. I think it's with an A, right? But now I know all about it and and I want to get that out there.
Tell me about your support group. Is the commonality I survived? I have it in my head still.
So that's the thing, I'm trying to find kind of that support group because as you know, you can be empathetic to somebody, you can be supportive, but until you've really gone through it, you don't get, until you've walked in their shoes, you really don't get the true grasp of the impact on their life and the fear and all that kind of stuff. Before I went through my divorce, I didn't really understand what that was like until I went through it, right? We all have those things where you can't really empathize. So finding support groups has been really, really hard. I did just find a woman who, and I think COVID has had kind of a negative impact on a lot of probably support groups. But they used to have them, and then since COVID, they were doing them online, and then it's kind of fell through the wayside. So I did find somebody who ran one of the support groups, and she was great, and we went out to lunch, and she was really sweet, and she said, I'll try to get some lunches going and things like that. So there is that need, I think, for support groups. I probably should go, maybe do a little therapy just for that fear, anxiety that I have in me now.
Go have
right?
a twofer, right?
Yeah. But there is a need, I think, for that piece. And especially, I think there's a lot of people who have them ruptured and then they've gone through that piece of it, because their story looks very different than mine. Just like you were saying, your story looks so different because you weren't able to talk about it and things like that, and it just happened. Whereas, you have that. So, mine, the unruptured piece just almost sets you apart from the ruptured people, but we all have this thing in our head, and hopefully it goes away. That's the goal. But there's always that fear. Will I have another one? Will I develop another one? Because sometimes, people have multiple ones. So it's.
Did they tell you you're likely to have another one?
No, they said not likely. And they looked, when they did the angiogram, they were looking for other ones. So, but, there's always that if you've had one, you probably could have another, especially because it was, we think I've had it for quite a while. So
people tell me I'm going to have another stroke. I'm like, why would you tell that to me?
Yeah. Like it's such a scary, and how do they know, right? How do they know? I know.
The infamous, they know, right?
Right. And that has to be, I don't know if you have that same fear inside, and you probably live your life like it could happen again, and you live life a little bit more to the fullest, right?
My experience, I feel that I have scarred my children. How do you feel?
Yeah, and there's a little bit of that guilt piece because I think they will have that fear in themselves, like your kids.
Yeah.
How can they not, right? And there's just times where I will just have a wicked headache and I have to lay on the couch and put, a washcloth and I'm kind of done. Yeah, and that's scary for them. And so it is that, it is, it has forever changed my life as well as everybody close to me. My friends worry, my support group, not a aneurysm support group, but my family and friends have been amazing. Like I could not have gotten through it, from taking me to appointments to helping me research to listening to me cry to,
Why me?
Well, and it's funny because I've never said that. I've never actually asked that because I felt so blessed that I found it. And so there is like that little piece of God has me here for a reason, and I just can't be negative in that way because I found it. And so it's interesting because a lot of people have asked me that, like, do you ever feel sorry for yourself, or do you ever say, and I haven't. There's been other things in my life, childhood dysfunction or, my divorce or things like that. I'm like, why did this happen? But this one, I just feel so blessed that I found it early and I was able to fix it.
So let me help you. What's that website?
So it's bafound.org. So Brain Aneurysm Foundation, that's kind of what it's short for. Okay. So bafound.org.
Okay.
It's a wonderful, wonderful resource because you can really go down a rabbit's hole reading things that are very scary. And I think they have many like webinars where they have doctors that are like, very much in tune with this diagnosis and the different things, from the time you're diagnosed with it to the different kinds of treatments to the effects after being treated for it. Caregivers, what that looks like for a caregiver, because a lot of people aren't as lucky as me and they are dealing with those rehabilitative pieces for their loved one. And so it's a fabulous website. It really, really is. It's great. And it has stories of survivors and things like that. It's really
a place where you can donate.
Yes, and a place where you can donate. And September 15th is the day of engagement. I went on there and did a donation, you can do in honor of. So that doctor who helped me just talked to me mom to mom, and I did a donation in her name. And then on the 15th, 15th, I'm going to do a donation in my doctor's names and send that to them, and just because they saved my life.
That's nice.
Yeah. So,
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
your story.
yeah.
And
Thank you for having me.
You're brave.
Thank you. So are you. And thank you for having this platform. I think it's amazing to get the word out there, because it's just, like you
One
said,
at a time.
Yep, one at a time. But yeah, this is a great thing you're doing.
Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you.